Spiker,
Here.
Valderrama. Here. Here.
First off, for our business would be the minutes from the October 19th, 2022 Boise District and Commission meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll move. Excuse me. I'll move to approve the minutes. I'll make it. Go ahead.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. The minutes are approved. Motion to approve the minutes is approved. Next, we're going to be discussing the districting process and why exactly we're doing it this way and on the timeline that we are doing it. First off, I know that it's been a fast process, and that's not exactly what everybody wants necessarily, but that is what we are having to work with, because we do have deadlines for election code with getting things to the county, to creating those districts, so that people can actually file to run for these districts next year for the city council election. And that is why we're up against such a tight timeline. We all wish it could be longer, and, we could all, nitty gritty, get into all the details of each one of these maps, but we are on a brief timeline. So that is why we are moving so quickly. Is there any other comments about that as to why we're doing it the way we're doing it? Okay.
Madam Chair, I just want to add, I agree with what you're saying, and I think it needs to be emphasized that, we do have not strict orders, but it's very clear orders, both from council and state code. And I just want to echo and emphasize what you said, which is that, this needs to go to commission with enough time for council to adopt it. And then the council, when they finalize it, it does need to give the public time to really get to know their new city council boundaries and consider running for public office. So I just wanted to, again, emphasize that we're doing this really for the benefit of the public. And I think the engagement actually has been quite great. I know a lot of us have received emails, and I was able to watch the public testimony that took place last week. And I was really impressed actually with how much engagement happened. So I just wanted to add that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Perry. With that, I think we'll move on to our next item, which was to review and discuss the most obviously popular map of last week's meeting, which was map 8. This is what we've gotten the most feedback on, and there's a lot to be said for it. I'd like to start with discussing map 8. Eric, could you put up map 8 for us?
Absolutely. Should be all set to go.
Okay, so I don't dislike map 8. I don't love map 8. And I think that part of my issues with map 8 come down to this idea of neighborhood and people wanting neighborhoods to stay together. I take issue with map 8 because it breaks up some very key neighborhoods that I think should remain whole. First and foremost, it breaks up our North End neighborhood, which is a very prominent neighborhood in the city. I don't think that we should split the North End personally. You can see, I'm sure Eric might be able to point out where the North End is on this map. Yeah. And it is split evenly between the yellow district and the red district, which I think is 3 and 4. And I don't necessarily agree with that. And I think that it should be one whole district. Similarly, Boise State's communities are like the feeder communities of Boise State, the Lusk district, the Beacon Street area. Those are all divided up. Boise State's district is in 3 actually, which I think is a big problem. And then I don't necessarily think that Southeast Boise should be divided along Boise Avenue. I personally live in Southeast Boise and can say that I use a lot of the amenities in On the other side of Boise Avenue, like that is an area that I travel frequently. I use frequently. The parks there, Ivy Wild is one I go to all the time. And I live over off of Park Center. So I don't necessarily appreciate how that's broken up. I know other people have some issues with some of the other areas. So yeah, I think that there's ways that we need to adjust this map. Like I said, I don't think it's all bad. I just think that it does need some tweaking. Anyone else?
Chairperson, yes, excuse me, Chairperson Love, if I could speak.
Councilman Peter?
Yes, I have, as you know,
Committee member.
based on my comments last week, that I do have problems with this map as well. And so I wanted to do some modifications to it. One thing I want to point out on this map and many other maps is that we seem to have agreed that the connector is a strong boundary. And the interstate would preferably be a strong boundary as well. And so when I started modifying the map, I assumed that would be something we want to keep in place. So I left everything east of that boundary, east of the connector, untouched in my modification. I left that alone. And I agree with you that there were some things downtown that I was not entirely comfortable with, but I could live with it. And if we had to go forward. The West Boise area, I'm not sure I could live with this. Could you show them my map, Eric? Please.
Showing the school districts as well, is that correct?
Yes, if you could.
All right, so forgive me, I'm going to jump to a different software because I don't have all that data quite ready, but I can move to this.
Well, while you're doing that, I want to mention one of the people who testified, and it was very interesting last week to hear people's testimonies and reading all the details that we got today and seeing some themes emerge. But I think Diane Shore has really articulated it well about why she loves her neighborhood in Southeast Boise. And one of the things, was about her hiking, her doing things with groups, her shopping opportunities. She really felt strongly about that neighborhood and talked about the quality of life. So then you think, okay, let's look at West Boise. What are the things that are within the control of the city that affected her ability to find quality of life here, and how are they available on West Boise? And maybe we can find those neighborhoods around those features. So I started digging around a little more, and I'll be getting back to that. But one of the things that struck me was, if you look at the population west of the connector and west of where the connector, the flying Y, where the connector and I-84 intersect, there's over 80,000 people in that area. So 1/3 of the population of Boise is in West Boise. And so it's not quite enough to have 3 members on the council, and it's more than having 1. So that's one of our complicating factors when we're trying to balance this out, as well as maintain these barriers, these edges that we've identified. So, and you guys know that better than I do, or anybody else probably, because we've all been dealing with it. So, but I went in looking, okay, just looking in that west area, what do we have and it came up several times last week about the West District, West Ada School District. And that's the purple boundary on here. And so you can see by moving changing the configuration of 1, so it has more of a east-west boundary rather than a north-south boundary, you include much more of the school district in that area of the city, within that area, within that one district. And it particularly includes a lot of the elementary schools that are contiguous within that district, which we talked about how the elementary schools and parents, that's a lot of where your interaction is within your community, is with your fellow parents. And so having those school districts, the West Ada School District represented in a get all these districts confused, the city council districts, I felt that it justified making one much wider to bring them in. And then when you get into the balancing things out, I extended it down along the edge of the bench. So the Mountain View area, you can see a fine sliver of green in there. That is the Mountain Hill Road the area, if you know where the Glenwood and or Goddard ends and crosses Cole, it's that area north of there. So it's a little sliver, but it fits in without violating, trying to cut apart some of the census districts there. But when you look at, if you could zoom out again, and of course, the big challenge, I think, for everybody is what to do with the very southwest corner of Boise. And we had quite a few comments come in here just in the last few days about that area. When I say a lot, it's nothing compared to the testimonies from the southeast Boise. But southwest Boise had some pretty strong feelings about being attached to, as some of our maps had, to the Federal Way, for example. And so I tried to figure a way that they could be included more in one zone or the other that was more palatable to them, but it's really difficult when you're trying to balance out the numbers. And so I also was hoping to get a boundary that made sense along the interstate, but again, getting the populations to work out, I just couldn't do it. So this was my compromise. To try to keep that boundary again going from west to east. And part of that is looking at where development is and where the city might annex. Because I don't know how this is all going to work when the city, if they annex that area southwest of those neighborhoods, which they have an option to do, but that's not our problem. Could you bring up the other map about the libraries? And this just, I wanted to share this because it was really, I found it kind of disturbing. I started looking at the libraries and I knew we didn't have a lot of libraries around, but I thought, okay, the library serves a major purpose for bringing communities together. And if you look at some of the comments, such as from Joan Wallace and who else, Teresa Smalls, Jeff Fillmore, they bring up the value of the libraries. There's one library in West Boise, just one, and that's up at Cole and Eustace. And again, the commentary that was often referenced about how that was so influential in bringing that neighborhood together and also as an economic driver in that intersection. Also, when you look at the major parks that have pavilions where you might have large events that you can rent, there's one in West Boise. So there's quite a difference in the area. And my concern is that the people in West Boise are, to some sense, guaranteed that they will have somebody in their neighborhood who will run for council, not who will be on the council, that their candidates will come from their neighborhoods. And so that was the other factor that was driving the way I mapped out the modified map 8. So anyway, I found this, like I said, I knew that most of the facilities and the city services were in other parts of the city, but I never saw it so graphically, just how much has been left empty in West Boise. Speaking as a West Boisean. Yeah. And lastly, I have to say that the other I'd probably have with 8, about 5 Mile, that actually, my neighborhood crosses 5 Mile. And I don't mean my housing development. I mean my friends, my associates, people I know, people I socialize with, go across that boundary. And so when I saw 5 Mile, I was like, I don't get that at all, because that's not how I live out there. And I don't know anybody who does. So that's my case for modifying 08 at the very least. I don't think my map is perfect by any means, but I don't think we're going to hit perfect. I don't think there is a perfect on this one. So, you have any questions for me? Or
I
comments?
actually do. And this is just kind of a what if scenario. What if it were to happen that the way you have your map with the 3 sections, dividing, Southwest Boise, then, kind of along that Fairview to Franklin corridor,
Yeah.
and then, the Chinden to Eustick Fairview area. What happens if 3 people, all who live west of 5 Mile, all in those 3, in each different district, wins that election? How does that represent the greater Boise if we get, those 3 people from this tiny strip of land west of 5 Mile potentially. And how does that represent the people on the bench? How does that represent, the people up in Winstead Park? And those areas that are near Garden City, for instance, I guess my issue with this is that geographically it could lead to having a very unbalanced council as far as where people are from. As far as potentially having 3 council members all live within, a mile from Meridian.
Well, isn't that true now? I mean, the councils that we've had historically have been largely from other parts of the city. So.
Right. But I think part of the intent of maybe what this was going to do was to create some geographic balance on the council. And I just don't know if this would solve the geographic balance issue, or if it could potentially lead to some more geographic problems with.
How would it not solve the geographic? I mean, how else would you solve the geographic problem unless you have districts that are focused in other parts of the city?
So, and this might be time to move on. I have an alternative map that I edited one of my maps to try and create some of that balance. I'm definitely open to suggestions about 5 Mile and editing some of that, but I just don't necessarily think that having 3 districts crossing that Meridian border is necessary. Like 2 would make some sense, but I don't know if we can, if 3 makes sense to me. If you understand.
No, I don't. How is it crossing the Meridian border?
Well, not crossing the Meridian border. I'm saying having 3 districts that border with Meridian instead of 2.
Oh, well, we have 4 that actually contact the city. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4. That 5 if you extend, depending on how far you get from downtown, into 2. So downtown Boise, there's certainly connections to them from multiple districts. Originally, 8 had 1 district that didn't connect to downtown Boise at all.
That's true.
Yeah. And so I was trying to get them all.
No, and I appreciate that. And I'm just saying that is the one downside I see to that map. This map. Quinn, do you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair.
Barry.
I'm trying to think about how to say this. So I heard, and Commissioner Peter, I heard your concern come out a lot during the testimony last week, but I think what I'm struggling with in the argument against however we're going to do this is that we still have to ensure that we're keeping precincts and census blocks without division and keeping population deviation as close as possible. And as I reviewed this map today on the other software, and you don't have to bring it up, but this doesn't show me the population deviation total and the precincts split total, but it still had fairly significant amount of precinct splits. And it did have a fairly large, not the largest by any means, but it still contained a higher population deviation than I think we should aim for. So I think what's really difficult about our job here on the commission is that we all have our own individual vision of what we think we identify certain neighborhoods as, and I'm as guilty of it as anyone else on this dais. But we still have to follow the law. I think one extreme goal of this commission is that we're producing a map that is the most legally viable to council. Because if it's litigated, then we create all sorts of issues. If we're like, well, we like this more because I identify with this more, but we're okay with 17 precinct splits, that's going to cause problems and create issues within election integrity. So I think we have to let go of some of our own personal bias about maybe what we think is the best and what we do. And I hear you. And why I think map 8 maybe is not perfect. And, I'm going to get to more other points on it. It still does a fairly decent job of breaking up people's ideas of neighborhoods, but it does a good job of identifying certain areas that are well known in the community, such as Northwest Boise. You do have a part of the airport corridor. You do have part of Southeast Boise. And yes, are there fixes possible? Absolutely. And it was not perfect because it still had precinct splits. So I just want to make sure that we're maybe satisfying and acknowledging our own biases about our own vision for maps, but we still have to follow what both council and the legislature has set for what is the most legally viable map out there. The other thing is I have yet to find a map that keeps every neighborhood intact. So if somebody has a magic wand on that, I would love to see it. But I think like when I think about the legalities or what council has put in place, the most difficult challenge for us will be keeping neighborhoods intact 100%. And there is a part of me that thinks it's okay where neighborhoods are split up because it does create engagement in council zones where maybe they're not all going to be elected in the same year. That is part of the ordinance that we will have to adhere to. And I don't think more engagement, even if you don't live in that neighborhood, is a bad thing. So I'm just going to say that out loud and throw my pen while I'm at it. Thank you. Commissioner Peter, when you brought up the map about libraries and pavilions and those things, I found that really, really interesting. And mostly because I think it's really important too, to remember that even no individual city council member has power to make decisions without council as a whole. So I think it's really important to remember that when we identify issues or problems in communities, like, so if you live in West Boise and you want more librarians, like, yeah, you go on to your council member and you request information for that, but it's still the council as a whole that makes decisions on behalf of the city. So I struggle to make that a justification for how we should slice and dice it up because no individual council member has more power. It's really council as a whole. And the school district boundaries, and this is me putting on my work hat, so forgive me. For those of you that don't know, I work for every school district in the state of Idaho, and I actually was just part of the contract for rewriting school district boundaries. And school districts don't have the unfortunate problem of aligning with precincts, much to the chagrin of our friend at the Ada County Clerk's office, which I'm sure will change over time. But if you looked at the school district boundaries, there are not clear-cut lines. So it will be very difficult to maintain a school district boundary 100%. And it's important to remember that school board zones don't align either with precinct boundaries. So I think the county is somewhat equipped to handle those situations. So I wouldn't put too much weight in that. And I thought that map 8 actually did a fairly decent job of majority keeping the West Ada boundary in. I know there is little angles that come over about it, but I think those are things that the county can work through. So those are just my thoughts on map 8 and just kind of some of the thoughts that I heard both through testimony and kind of some of the concerns that I've heard here today. And there is, I want to talk about other maps, but I'll wait for my comments and see if commissioners have comments on map 8. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, can I reply to those comments?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, as far as the school district boundary, I wasn't really trying to match that. The discussion about the importance of the school district boundary was related to how people interact and how communities, how you have relationships building. And the part of that was based on your children all go to the same school. And so the boundary on map 8 divided a significant part of the West Ada School District, particularly when it came to the individual schools. So that argument that this was important, why we needed to have what District 1 in map 8 is that it was representing getting those people together, basically. Well, it wasn't going to get those people together, it was going to actually divide them. So that's why I proposed changing that. As far as the libraries, yes, of course, the council makes all the decisions. I mean, I understand that. What surprised me was as long as this part of the city has been in the city, not to have more investment out here. And there is a feeling of disaffection. So, and yes, how do things get communicated to city council, just like in any democracy? It's a lot of personal relationships. And it's not likely that if your district, if you're represented by a district that extends far beyond your neighborhood, either socially, culturally, educationally, whatever, economically, you know, how likely you're going to be knowing that council member. And so trying to tighten up these districts breaking up the city. I mean, that was the goal of ordering the city to do this, was to increase the relationship with the council and build those relationships at a broader part of the city. That's how I view it. And so that's why I thought it was important to have multiple districts in West Boise, besides having over 80,000 people out there. And, and then as far as the precincts, that's a real pain in the neck, because we've already decided we want to have clear boundaries. Well, there's 1517 is one of the precincts. If you're familiar with 1517, it has a little cap. So it comes up to, I think, is it Ustick, a main road, but then it has a little piece of it that goes up across the road and across into another census district. And so trying to get rid of that little cap was, one little problem. And it's one of many of trying to match the precincts and stay with clear boundaries on roads. And, we can work with that, but we're never going to get it perfect. We're always going to have some precincts. I don't know if there's a target. I don't even know exactly the number of precincts we have in the city.
It's roughly 100.
Okay, so if we want to have a 10% goal, maybe of 10, but I don't know if we could reach that really and still adhere to those boundaries, and we'll have to make some kind of compromise. So yes, that's a problem. I think as far as the percentages, I thought I came fairly close. I mean, there's some that are less than one. District 1 is less than 1%, for example. None of them are over 3, I think. So you could see them up there. So yeah, let's see, 3 was 279, 6 was 298, because we run into these problems in Southwest Boise and so on. So,
I would like to open it up to Travis or to Commissioner Spiker and Commissioner Valderrama. I know Commissioner Spiker actually had a take on map 8, and it actually had very low deviation, and actually only one split is what it looked like. At least that's what Eric reported to us, but
Managed to get rid of all of the splits. So there's 0 splits in the precincts. And I think it's less than 5% deviation. It's my understanding that, I know we talked about using roads to separate districts, but it's my understanding that a polling station, if you're in a precinct, there's a polling station for your precinct, correct? So the Boise Avenue was a big argument for map 8, and saying that, if I'm on this side of Boise Avenue, I'll go vote here or I'll go vote there. But that doesn't make sense, I guess, if you have to go to your polling station anyway, if you're in a precinct. So I broke up that area to get rid of the precinct splits off of Boise Avenue. But yeah, I don't know. I guess in my eyes, I feel like we should do everything we can to eliminate the precinct splits. I know neighborhoods are important. I think that map still, it still only splits 11 neighborhoods. I don't know. I was striving to, I think listening to Phil McGrain talk about just the election integrity was a big thing that really struck me. And knowing that if we didn't have any precinct splits, that we could eliminate that part of this, it was a pretty big issue for me. So anyway.
I mean, I actually, when I went to go edit map 8, I started with something similar to what you did, Travis, and then I got carried away. So with trying to make changes with neighborhoods and stuff like that. But no, I think if we wanted to go with a map 8 version, I think that this is a very good option, just based on the fact that and maybe Eric found a tiny little one that you didn't see or something, but I think that this is an excellent option, and possibly the most viable that we have put forth so far legally.
I have a question. Let me defer to Commissioner Valderrama.
Well, I like it. I mean, it's, I've been a lifelong North Ender, and, like the splitting of certain areas, right? Like that's something I was thinking about, but I think it does a really good job for the challenges that we have, as far as, abiding by all the points that we need to keep together, the precincts, the census, the demographics, the the variation, all of those different elements. I like it, like for what it is right now. And I do agree with Vice Chair Perry with regards to that area that kind of borders the western part. I think that number one right there pretty much captures it. And I think it speaks to that area right now. I mean, we're good. Boise is going to continue to grow. So, we'll leave the next challenge up to in the next 10 years, but so far so good. I think I like this for right now, what we've got to work with and maintain our legalese and, abide by the statutes and the elements that we have to maintain. So I like it so far.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you zoom in just like slightly on District 3 and 5? I just want to look at the break there. Okay. Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm impressed that you were able to get no precinct splits fixed on this. I also had attempted to try and fix map 8 a little bit and was not extremely successful. So I commend both you and Chair Love, Travis, for getting that down. I think this map makes a lot of sense, and I think we have to look at the legal prescription that we've been given. I just think that has got to take precedent over some of our other personal preferences. So anyway, I just wanted to add that. And I have something to add later on another map I submitted, but I will wait until we've concluded discussion on this one.
With that, do you have a question?
I do. The argument was made that District 1, we should only have one district bordering Meridian. One district bordering Meridian. What is the logic of that?
I wasn't necessarily saying just one. I was saying that potentially 3 is too many. I was saying
Why would that be?
because if you look at it, you could have potentially 3 council members come from 5 Mile West that way. And I think that would be geographically unrepresentative of the city as a whole. And that's the way I see it. I could say 2 makes sense, would be something that would make sense to me. I just feel like we need to have representation every time from all over the city. And I feel like the best way to do that is to have, a Western district, a Southern district, a Northern district, an Eastern district, and a Central district.
You don't really have a Western district. You have parts of you have an isolated group. One district doesn't even touch downtown. It's really looks like it's part of Meridian.
Right. But in that sense, you are guaranteed representation from the Western side of the city.
Just one.
But also guaranteed from literally where I grew up, which is off of Maple Grove and Fairview. You're guaranteed one from the West Bench there.
But you could have 4 from downtown or very close to downtown and 1 from West Boise. Am I right?
But also look at the deviation look at the deviation. The population that lives west of 5 Mile is roughly within.
Right, but you're talking about representation, and in this one, you could still end up with 4 or at least 3. No, really 4. Easily have 4, maybe 5 representatives, all from downtown Boise, or very close to downtown Boise.
But Madam Chair, I think in that sorry, Madam Chair, may I? I think, but on that point, I don't view all of these as downtown Boise. And I laughed at the conversation that happened about do you view the Albertsons on 16th and State as downtown? Because as a former North Ender, I do not consider that as part of downtown. And I live in the Bench area. And I do think that pretty much once you cross the river and you start going uphill, which, mostly is, I think, university residents. But once you start leaving the river, you start to have different identities as what it looks like. So I think, again, it's hard to say all of this is downtown Boise when, that might be Commissioner Peters' view. And I respect that 100%. But I live on the depot bench. I walk downtown in 25 minutes where I work, and I do not consider myself to be a downtown person, but somebody who lives in West Boise might consider that, if that makes sense. So I think it's important to, again, acknowledge that it's hard to take your own visual identity of this city and then identify it as being a potential issue. So thank you.
But I need to reply to that if I may, Chairperson. But you're saying essentially that about West Boise, that if you have 3 districts in West Boise, you're going to run a risk of them all voting coming from one small area of Boise. Whereas you're saying that no, in the rest of Boise, that's not true, but we'll be over there.
No, I
That's what
wasn't necessarily saying that at all. I was saying that that would increase the chance of having geographic misrepresentation in that sense. And I would say that this is not my favorite map. Like I did a map that I actually think does a better job of doing the geographic balancing a little bit, and we can get to that in a minute. But I just think that you need to have, you'll see what I mean in a minute when we get to this other map, what I
Okay, let's
mean with
look at
that.
the other map. And
So if everyone is,
Here, Lev, I'd just like to add to this map. I feel like it addresses not only the support we got for map 8, but also the support for the opposition map 8 about having continuous precincts. There were some comments about trying to eliminate and just have 2 districts north of the river, and that's what this does. So I think until, I don't want to, I guess until I receive more negative feedback towards map 8, I would say, I think that's what kind of sets it up to be the best option at this time.
noted, and I would say that's a very high possibility, but let's move on to other maps and then we'll get to map cleanup potentially. So, and then selection.
Madam
So-
Chair, I just have a quick, I covered the map, the other map I submitted, just so that it's not one that I plan to have a long discussion for,
Mhm.
but it's the, Eric, it's the low deviation or the, what? Okay, so I know we got contacted by a citizen who really wanted us to recreate the Ada County Clerk's map that had the low population deviation and no precinct split. So I actually had redrawn that map. And if you see, I was like, what? This doesn't make sense at all. It has a huge population deviation. I think it did have at least 1 precinct split. I can't remember how many, but I had Eric check with the county and they did confirm that when we were presented on that information from the clerk, that it was using outdated census data and precinct information. So I wanted to show the public and the individual who had contacted us to show that I had attempted to recreate the best of my ability to show that it didn't quite do what we had anticipated. So I just wanted to get that on the record. Thank you.
It is fascinating to see the population changes with that. So I would like to bring up the map that I submitted separately. So this would be an edit of a previous map that I did. So I think it's the last one, Eric, I think. Yes, this one. So what I did here is I attempted to better look at precincts, not just precincts, but districts from truly a neighborhood standpoint, but also in trying to keep neighborhoods together as much as possible. Neighborhoods that I saw having commonalities. Because as council members, you want to be able to represent people who generally have commonalities about their concerns for the city, right? Maybe not necessarily the same viewpoints, but their concerns. I felt this did a better job of addressing Southeast Boise, not splitting it along Boise Avenue, but I think it's Federal Way a little bit. Anyway, and then using Broadway to separate Southeast Boise from the Central Edition, keeping the Boise State neighborhoods together up towards the Depot Bench and even Winstead Park. I feel like that those communities have a lot in the same commonality, being right along the connector there, being, I know there's a lot of rental units in the area. So a lot of those similarities, same with that part of downtown Boise, the west end of downtown Boise. Then keeping the north end largely together. And there are, and there was one tiny little split in the north end there, but really trying to keep the north end together, and the communities northwest of there. And then as far as the west side of Boise, District 2 was indicative of where I grew up. Largely those everyone in that area generally would go to Fairmont Junior High, so that to me made a lot of sense. Similarly, everything west of 5 Mile, I thought that did make sense to me. The school district is largely along that 5 Mile line, not exactly, but that is generally the common road that splits it. Where it actually splits, and I know this from experience, is in the middle of a neighborhood, like in between two houses. So that's not really a line we can follow exactly. And then what I did for District 6 was I tried to think, okay, all these people who live along I-84, who lives near the airport, who are impacted by that noise, by the traffic every day, who have to do, and Overland Road to a certain extent as well. And I wish it didn't extend all the way to Columbia Valley or, to Columbia Village, but unfortunately, like, you have to draw lines somewhere. But that's why I liked this map. And where I do have precinct splits, there's only a handful of them. Similar to the original map 8 is along major roads. So that's why I did that. Any?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, if I could. So could you name 3 common issues in District 1?
In District 1?
And not the school district, because the school district.
Well, first and foremost, I would say, coming up against Meridian Road, or Meridian, being on the other side of Meridian, specifically like Eagle Road traffic is really bad in that area. I would say development, parks, like you said, not having parks, not having a library that isn't the Ada County Library. I think that is a big issue. I think those are all fair issues that unite that entire area, as well as being the similar school district. And then growth, right? All of those areas have a lot of have the potential for infill. There's old little farms that used to exist in that area that are being filled in with higher density apartments or, duplexes and things like that. And I think that's a big concern for people in that area. How are you infilling those little blocks that aren't developed yet?
And could you compare those to what are the interests in the North End? Concerns in the North End.
Okay, so concerns for the North End, traffic along State Street, first and foremost, because that's your major corridor. Bike lanes, I would say, is probably a big one. Parking on the street, that's been a major, I would say personally, I drive in the North End 3 times a week. Because I take my child up to the Foothills Learning Center there. And, I would say biking there, I would say traffic, I would say probably add-on units and how that affects the neighborhood and short-term rentals and that kind of thing. All of those are major issues that are facing the North End that I would say that you don't necessarily have in West Boise.
Madam Chair,
Mhm.
I also thought you did a magnificent job. I did worry about how wide District 6 is. I know you said you couldn't, fix how, someone on the other side of 5 Mile essentially could also be representing individuals who over here on Federal way out towards Mountain Home. So that's one concern I had. The other one, of course, is the splitting of District 5, where I felt like the bench proper gets a little bit cut off a little bit in that one, which is, again, I here's me calling my own bias out, so forgive me. But so anyway, I just wanted to say that I thought that this had done a good job, but I'm still leaning towards map, whatever Commissioner Spiker's map was, I just felt like that was much a cleaner fix. So thank you.
Any other commentary or other maps to discuss?
Can we put up the Commissioner Spiker's map and this one side by side? Or?
Yes, we can. Bear with me.
Chair Love.
Mhm.
May I ask, did you play around with District 6 and 4 to try and balance that out, seeing as how you have a positive population of 6 and -8 and 4?
I thought that the line was so small with District 4, being that it was 0.08, that was hard. And it's that southeast area is difficult because of the way the precincts align. I was actually playing more with between 5 and 6 to see if I could have more of a true bench area, and actually a little bit of District 1 as well. And it's just that's, I mean, it's not perfect by any means, and I'm well aware of that fact. I actually think that, you know, potentially, and we had kind of talked about this, but doing some sort of a blend of the two might be an interesting way to handle this, in the sense that, you know, I would like to see the North End be one community. I would like to see, you know, having a central district, right? Not just, you know, 5 along the edges. So, but that's just my mindset. Yeah.
So just for clarification, the shaded in areas are Commissioner Spiker's boundaries, and then Chair Love's boundaries are just the thicker black lines, so you can see the differences.
Oh,
Okay, so Spikers is the colors
Correct.
and Love is the hard boundaries. Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Mhm.
I'm looking at the memo that we got today where it talks about districts must be compact, which I'm curious if we think that if you could go back to the lines, Eric, do we consider district, whatever that big district is, I think it's 6. Do we call that, is that considered compact in? I'm just curious, like, and I, you know, I'm not going to put legal on the spot and ask them to do that. And I don't know if there is a legal definition of what compact is, but I just wanted that to be on our minds as I'm looking at sort of what the legal requirements is for us as we really decide. And my second comment is, you know, I don't know if we can draw maps on the fly, and poor Eric would be like put on the spot, but I'm anxious because I know we're under a time crunch. So I know that, you know, I think the goal of today's meeting is to really move a map forward for the final public comment period. So I don't know how we should proceed. I just wanted to get that on people's radars as we begin to move to motions and such. Thank you.
sure. Oh, you want to ask?
No, go ahead.
I agree with you that the downtown area, I viewed that as being one district for several reasons. And one of them was the one you brought up, that you could end up with multiple representatives all downtown because the districts all come in.
So
there.
interestingly enough, my map splits downtown into 2.
I actually, my earlier map went in and tried to make the immediate downtown area into its own. So it is possible to do that, but it takes some real tweaking and movement of boundaries, some in, some out. So, you know, do we want to kind of to go what Commissioner Perry was saying, that do we want to take the time to try to do that? Is how important do you all feel that we not have too many of the districts going into the immediate downtown Boise area?
I personally, like I said, I actually am happy with, I would say I'm happy with either of these maps. I do prefer my map just based on the fact that in my mind, the neighborhoods make more sense. But that, like we said, we do need to compromise. And that's the question. Is there a way to compromise between these two maps? Is there a way to compromise with your idea of having multiple districts along, you know, a north and a south district along like that west Boise area? And if that's possible, and I don't know if it is. Eric, is it possible?
It is within the time frame, depending on how many changes you make. I will have to go to the Maptitude software in order to get accurate population estimates to draw on the fly. I know you all went through the exercise and know how it's tedious and it's slow. And I don't know if I'd want to torture ourselves or the public with that, but yes, I can.
And I would have to ask, is that something as we as a council are interested in doing? Or if we are just purely wanting to move forward with one of these two?
Madam Chair. I think it is really in our best interest to really think about the public submissions on map 8. And we wanted public engagement. Council wanted public engagement. I like actually that this map 8 originally was a public submitted map. I think that speaks volumes to how the community was able to engage in the process. And I know that the city staff went above and beyond to really get the word out about what maps were available. And when people turned out, they turned out in favor of one map really strongly. I think what I took from that meeting was, okay, what do we need to do to get what the public liked as these maps to be the most legally sound map moving forward? And I think we have the answer with us in front of us, which is Commissioner Spiker's map that now breaks 0 precincts. It keeps neighborhoods together. It does not split census blocks, and it has a really decent population variation so that it does not have beloviated population zones. So in my opinion, I think it's in the best interest of council to consider a map. I think that there is one in front of us that looks like that. And I think for the interest of time, it does not make sense to ask the staff. And then again, the public to go through and do hurdles and backgrounds to see what we've done on the fly here today. Because I think we need to think about what that looks like and move forward tonight so that the public does truly have a full week to review that before we're able to take public testimony next week. Thank you.
Yep. If we're ready to make a motion on that, we can. But first and foremost, I would like to do a little bit of cleanup and just verify that there are 0 splits. I was just trying to see in District 4 on this map, if there is one down, yeah, right where that your cursor is at. Or if that's
This happens
just
to be a
trick of
tricky
the
area.
eye. Yeah.
Does
Okay.
the city
that's
limits
just-
creep down?
That's just a trick of the eye. Okay. That is all I wanted to, I just wanted to make sure that we don't have any hidden splits in there. And I know we are planning on working with the county to make sure that our lines do line up properly. So if there is any areas within question, I'm sure we can work that out after the fact. So yeah, we can move on to motions if you would like.
Madam Chair, for a motion.
Recognized.
Thank you. Pursuant to City Code 2-1607B, I move to select map 11, and I'm going to look and make sure that's the right number. Thank you. As the draft districting map. I move to accept this districting map with one change, and I'll be interested to hear how folks feel about this because now I'm not even sure how I feel about it. I would like to move the current map or District 4 and swap it with District 6 so that it reads 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which I realize is probably very difficult for the clerk, but it would essentially be swapping District 4 and District 6. I just feel like that is the most. So I'm going to repeat my motion for the port, Madam Clerk. So pursuant to Boise City Code 21607B, I move to select map 11 with the city council district numbers as follows, which is very difficult, but 1, 2, and then the current numbered would be number 4. The current number 4 would be numbered 6. And then leave District 3 and 5 as is, as the draft districting plan, and request that it be forwarded to a public hearing on November 2nd, 22 at 7 p.m. Thank you. Very hard motion to make. Okay. It's not even seconded, so we don't.
Is there a second?
Second.
We can do discussions.
Yeah, no, I move to open this motion up for discussion. Do I need to repeat the motion?
No, chairperson. I think we all understood it.
So my issue is with the numbering. I don't have a problem with the motion itself. I would like to actually flop 5 and 6. Because if you look at the election years, it's 1, 3, and 5, 2, 4, and 6. And I feel like we shouldn't have adjacent districts up for election if possible. So, or 4 and 6, I guess that would be, is that right? I'm sorry. I'm so
Very confusing.
let me look at this.
Yeah.
1, 3, and 5. Yeah. So, 5 and 4, sorry. Swap 5 and 4. Or 5 and 6. I would like to either swap 5 and 4 or 5 and 6. That is what I would like to do.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question of the staff? And Hannah, you don't have, if you don't know the answer, and I know that we cannot make decisions based on whatever, but can you remind us that, so in 2023, all 6 districts are up for election. Is that correct?
Chair Love, Vice Chair Perry, that's correct.
Thank you.
2023.
Yeah, sorry, 2023.
Yes.
What did I say, 22? Okay, sorry. Yeah, I know it's in 2020. Okay. So in 2023, all 6 districts are up for election. And then can you remind us, Hannah, what happens from that forward? Because I know that you have to phase that in. So can you help remind us in 2025, what districts would be up for election? If you can, thank you.
So in 2023, all seats are up. Odd seats are up for 2 years.
Okay.
Even seats are up for, I'm sorry, reverse that. Give me a second. I'm thinking through.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Odd seats are up for 4-year terms.
In
In
2025?
2023.
Okay.
Even seats are up for 2-year terms. And then in 2025, it's just the even seats up for 4 years. And so on after that, every 2 years staggered, even odd for the 4-year terms. So the only strange, I guess,
Yes.
election is this coming election as we finish phasing in from at-large to districted, where all seats are up at the same time, but half get a 2-year term, half a 4-year term.
And which half was the 2-year term?
Even seats.
Even.
The even seats will have a 2-year term.
Okay. Okay. Now I have to think about this. Oh, actually.
Can I make a suggestion?
Hmm.
Totally going off the pattern so far. If you went in a counterclockwise way, you could go, I'll go with colors here. Orange 1, yellow 2, green 3, blue, purple, what is that? Purple would be 4, pink 5, and then blue 6. Just counterclockwise. Or that's clockwise rather. Yeah.
And sorry, Chair Love, were you suggesting we move 3 and 6? Was that what you're?
I was saying either 5 and 6 or 4 and 5.
So that it would be counter. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm a visual person. so
Yeah, me too.
I have to-
Yeah.
So
My logic is,
the red would be
like you
one,
said, having
two,
bordering, not have
green.
districts on the same border up for election the same time. And I know that's going to be 5 years out from now, I think, if that's right.
Mhm.
3 years out from now. So, but eventually that'd be the case. So that's why I'm trying to alternate even and odd as you go around.
Similarly, you could swap 3 and 6, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And I would be fine with just swapping 3 and 6. I think that would be the easiest. way to-
So, yeah, 1,
red and
2, 3,
purple.
4, 5.
6.
Oh, 3 and 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 and 6. So red and purple.
So 1, 2.
I can amend the motion. Do you want me to amend it or do you want to do a substitute?
I think you can.
Okay, actually, I'll wait for Merlani. Madam Chair, I would like to amend my motion. Yes, I'm gonna redo the motion. I'm gonna retract my motion if my seconder will also retract their second.
I will retract.
Okay, thank you. And Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion.
Recognized.
Okay, thank you. Pursuant to Boise City Code 21607B, I move to select map 11 as the draft districting map. Pursuant to the same city code, I move to designate the city council seat districts as follows. Blue District 1, Pink District 2, Purple District 3, Green District 4, Yellow District 5, and Red District 6. Is it red? Okay. I move to accept this draft districting map as numbered as the draft districting plan and request it be forwarded to a public hearing on November 2nd, 2022 at 7 p.m.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Okay. The motion pursuant to Boise City Code 21607B, map 11 as the draft districting map, with the city council districts as pursuant to the same code, I move to designate the city council districts as follows. Blue as 1, pink is 2, purple is 3, green as 4, yellow is 5, and red is 6. As the draft districting plan, and request that it be forwarded to a public hearing on November 2nd, 2022 at 7 p.m. Passes. It's okay.
A question for the commission, if I may. In an effort to get the alignment perfect with the Ada County precincts, are there concerns about making some modifications where we have zero population change? But just because of the way that the Maptitude software was not able to snap to these boundaries, I can't accommodate that. This will actually help with the official final drawing. This will make absolutely no change to the overall boundaries nor the population. It's really just cleaning up some minor discrepancies that are within the right of way.
Would we have to amend our motion for that?
I think that follows the intent of the motion. So
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Adjourn.
Thank you.